Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm loud and clear. Are you able to see me, Liz? Okay, cool.
Yes, loud and clear.
Seems there is technical hitches, but that's okay for the presentation. The technical team allow us, we're gonna start because I can see it's already 2 p.m. And maybe the rest of the team will be able to get us if we have already started. Maybe you are able to drop the presentation, that's okay. So at this point, I'm gonna invite one of us, Stacey, if you are there. I've not seen Stacey, but anyway, Stacey, if you're there, are you there? I am not able to see you kindly.
Hello, Collins. Yes, I'm here.
Cool, great. So Stacey will take us through. Over to you, Stacey. Maybe your video should be on.
Hello, Collins. Will you please give me a moment? Oh, you can go ahead as of now. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. I hope you can see me. Thank you so much, Stacey. And I'm sorry for the technical hitches. Distinguished delegates, esteemed partners and representatives from East Africa and across the globe, from UNESCO, Africa CDC, WHO, fellow practitioners and guardians of African most vital resources. Jambo and good morning and good evening. At this particular time, I'll take the team through housekeeping because it sometimes is good to make the house in order and you know what is expected of you. And we would like to ask our guests to be on mute during the time our delegates will be contributing. And also we encourage you to chat. We encourage you to introduce yourself, your name, the organization that you represent, and the country on the chat, because this is the best platform that you can use to network with your team. And the session will take 2 hours. So the team, the moderator, will make it as engaging as possible. So if you have any question, kindly you can put it on the chat. Also, we'll require of you to unmute yourself and also contribute during the discussion. So we'll have our panelists talking prior, and then you'll be able to have some time to give remarks and also to ask questions if possible. We are convened today. Today, we know we are in Mental Health Awareness Month, a time that must be viewed not merely as commemorable window, but as an urgent mandate for institutional action. Looking at our registration metadata, I'm telling you, I am emboldened by the cross-continental synergy in this room. We have Matthew will be providing insight from NASA India. I've seen Otieno Mondi. I've seen from Solid Mind Counseling Clinic in Rwanda. I've seen Tan from Meima and also Papandia from Senegal. So the presence of our colleagues from the UNESCO also chair at UNESCO, Karibuni Sana. This anchor this season in the exact academic rigor our mission demands. And your presence here confirms that the invisible injury in African sports is now globally a priority. So before I proceed with our strategic charge, I want to activate the collective intelligence of this huddle. If you are in the house virtually, please navigate to the chat box right now on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is purely survivalist and 10 is psychological sanctuary. How will you rate the current sports environment for youth in your country? Let us see the empirical reality on our digital scoreboard. So kindly take time and just rate what is happening currently in your country. Yeah, so for those who are new today, maybe those who did not attend the first roundtable that we had last week, we are a grassroots-born laboratory for social transformation, that is YIDP. So I'll be glad to give a brief of insights because we know Africa possesses the world's youngest population, 60% under age of 25. Yet research from UNICEF 2024 and the Africa CDC reveals harrowing reality. 1 in 6 Africa adolescents are battling clinical anxiety. In our sports academies, in our sports club, in our sports in schools, we have allowed a survivalist culture to take root. We treat a 12-year-old as a family poverty exit strategy. I think we really discussed in our last conversation. And this leads to identity foreclosure, a state where a child's self-worth is entirely predicted or predicated on a scoreboard. If they suffer an injury or non-selection, their human identity shatters. At Youth Initiative Development Program, we believe an athlete who is not all cannot be a sustainable asset. We believe a young person who is in the community and is not all is not a sustainable asset. We are moving from building stadium to building sanctuaries, and that's why we are here to have this discussion. How best can we build a sanctuary that will enable our young athletes to thrive? So, distinguished partners, I must offer a radical institutional disclosure. This series is a volunteer-led, non-funded initiative by Youth Initiative Development Program and the Triple I Foundation. We did not wait for an international grant to save an African child's mind. Why? Because the cost of silence is higher than the cost of implementation. In our 5 years roadmap, we have already moved from research to curative design phase of the Mindball initiative. Our technical toolkit designed to turn every coach into a frontline mental health responder. Currently, our tools are in review stage, and we are moving with agility because our children are burning out now. And we believe that through building a partnership and coming together, we'll be able to come up with the right tools that will not cause harm, but will transform a life within our community and within our spheres of operation. So today's session, From Play to Protection, is about the architecture of resources, PPPs to be in particular, and we are aligning with the WHO for 2023 priorities to bridge the clubs to clinic gap. So my appeal to the Federation, donors and ministries on this call is this. Mental health is not an extra. It is a risk mitigation strategy, and we are seeking to mobilize a sustainable capital to scale these interventions. We are moving from jersey branding to resilience infrastructure. So I will want you to ask yourself in this house virtually, if we can find billions for sports, broadcasting rights, and stadium concrete, Why is mental health still the invisible line item in our national budgets if our youth are our greatest assets? Why are we not ensuring their minds? That is. So it is high time now we prioritize mental health just as any other physical health. So this series fits into a grandest milestone, and it's a roadmap of the Continental Youth Sports Wellbeing Summit that we'll be having in November. And we are still at the stage whereby we are building the team who are interested to be part of this, who have seen a gap that really needs to be filled, who have seen a serious need to save life within our community. This is where we will ratify the Safe Sport Charter, and we are inviting you to join us as knowledge partner or delegate sponsor and logistic partner. Because remember, sports is the only unit that really drives millions and millions and billions and millions and millions of young people across the globe. And we are urging you to make or help support a coach who is in Turkana, a coach who is in a remote area, a teacher who is in remote area and in sports to be part of this discussion so that we can be able to build a sustainable, healthy community or healthy sports for them. As we transition into our panel, I will, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome the moderator, who is a titan, and she's really doing an amazing job. In fact, in private partnerships, and also doing a lot of job in collaborations. So without wasting time, allow me to welcome Lizzie Otai, so that you can start kickstart the soccer competition for today. Over to you,
Great.
Lizzie, if you are able to
Thank you
hear me.
so much, Collins. I was expecting some sort of a sign, a flag, so that we can start going, or on your Mac or something. I wanted it to be more sportish, but no worries. If there's going to be a bell later on and then a word at the end, that would be
Unfortunately,
awesome. But
I've forgotten the whistle. This is so, I don't
that would
know.
have been awesome.
But
It would have
somebody
been
get me
awesome,
a
yeah.
whistle. Over
But
to you.
thank you so much, Collins, for that introduction, and also kind of giving a little bit of meat on why we gathered here today. This is the second fashion of the discussions. This is still going to be ongoing. But what I like about this is we're talking about sports, and we're bringing in the aspect of health into it, and not only health, mental health, because that's a huge discussion that's ongoing, not only across the health sector. I'm just super excited that we're linking this with everything that's ongoing. And honestly, it's this shift is overdue. We needed to start having these candid discussions out of boardrooms into open spaces, because mental health is a huge challenge. And because of that, and because of the background you've given, I'm not going to talk much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Miss Lizzie Otai. I'm the business development consultant for Zenith Global Health. Though we are a UK-based organization, yes, we do have branches and consultants across the African continent, and we are also African registered. So I'm super excited to be having the next 2 hours of your important, day. And let's just have a decent conversation. Let's have an honest, candid, um, cup of tea sort of conversation. And now the good news is we have not gathered a sleeping panel. This is not going to be a sleeping conversation. So I'm hoping we will also hear from you. You might be there knowing what is happening, what's ongoing, what needs to be changed, or what you're doing that is actually impacting the space altogether. And joining me for this plenary is a very strong and dynamic lineup of speakers. They're all male. I need to say that up front. So I'm super excited just to learn from this gurus in their own dynamics. So we do have Nahom Jemba. I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher any of your names. My apologies, from Engage Health, who will help us think through protection, in grassroots sports, and that's a crucial conversation. We also have Dr. Shadrick upon a PhD holder who will unpack the financing side of scale, what it takes to move from good intentions to, investable systems. And, I like money, the way Collins has introduced me. I like connections and looking at the person who knows where the money is, where the finances are, or where you can actually unpack. So stay tuned. You might find that your next partner is actually one of the speakers. And now we also will have some time for Dr. Richard Dabari from the Kenyatta University and UNESCO Chair Activities, who will bring in the sports psychology and research lens. Honestly, if we are going to talk about anything today, we need to bring in the data. Where do we look like in terms of mental health and sports? And I'll be moderating this conversation. So my work is pretty easy. It's just to ask a question, sit back, relax, and kind of learn as we go. And by the end of this session, we're just not hoping for good ideas, to be honest. We're aiming for practical outcomes. We're aiming for partnerships to come out of this. And of course, there's going to be a big convening later on in November by YIDP. They'll talk about it later on. So we're also openly hoping that you'll be so engulfed and enticed and kind of figure out why it's so crucial to have this conversation. Please come on board, partner with IDP. Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about sports. So as we begin, I invite you all to speak boldly. I mean, what I like with YIDP convenings is you can be honest and candid about what's going on. So be bold, ask those questions, let us know what's on your mind, what is happening on ground. We need to have these discussions. We need to have systems in place that recognize that mental health is a big issue. And no, it's not only a health issue. It affects us as human beings. It affects the sports arena. It affects the athletes and everybody within the sports fraternity. So before I speak too much, because I can go on and on, as I mentioned, it's not a sleeping panel. If you feel like you're starting to doze off, give me a heads up, a thumbs up. We can shift things. So we're very flexible. We'll try and make the jargons less, have a candid discussion, and bring you into the conversation. So when you feel like one of the speakers has said something that you feel there's an aha moment, please type that aha thought you've had. Raise up your hand. We'll try and interject as we go. But before we start, let's give it up for our first speaker who's going to deliver a keynote, Nahom Bero Jumper. Women data health protection. So he's just going to let us know why we're here, why we're having these discussions. So we're talking about the architecture of protection, and we're trying to scale up, but we're also trying to bring in that mental health aspect. So without further ado, Nahom, I know I met you. You were on the call. If you can just kick off the discussion, so let's hear from you. Over to you, Nahom.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Distinguished guests, esteemed partners, panelists, colleagues, and the champions of youth well-being across Africa, I would like to say good afternoon. It's a great honor to address this roundtable, convened in the Youth Initiative Development Program. We gather here as this is so important movement for our continent, one that calls not only for conviction, but for structure, not only for passion, but for systems. The theme before us, moving from fragmented interventions to institutionalized ecosystem, is both timely and urgent. It asks us to confront a simple truth. If we want our youth athletes in Africa to thrive, then mental health and psychosocial support must be built into the architecture of grassroots sports, not added as an afterthought. Africa is home to the world's young population, and by 2050, the continent's youth population is projected to exceed 830 million. This is not the demographic fact, it's the strategic reality for development, peace, innovation, and shared prosperity. Yet, alongside this opportunity lies protection gap. Millions of young people, grassroots sport in one of the most influential social institutions is living in harm. It's where identity is shaped, discipline is learned, talent is nurtured, and hope is sustained. But in too many settings, this space remain disconnected from formal health systems, weakly linked to safeguarding mechanisms, and undersupported by sustainable financing. This is why the shift from play to protection matters so profoundly. We must stop treating mental health as a short-term project and begin treating it as part of Africa's human capital infrastructure. When young athlete is struggling with anxiety, exposure to violence, substance use risks, burnout, or trauma, the consequences are not confined to performance on the field. They affect learning, relationship, health-seeking behavior, productivity, long-term life outcomes. Protection, therefore, is not something which is separate from development. Protection is development. The three structural barriers we must address. One, the financing gap. Too much support for sport remains episodic, which is dependent on some occasions, symbolic, or limited to visibility-based sponsorship, while too little is invested in psychosocial safety, referral systems, and youth-centered care. The second point is infrastructure informality. Many community clubs and academies operate in extraordinary commitment, yet with routine links to primary care, trained support personnel, or standard safeguarding pathways. The third point is survivalist pressure placed on young athletes when sport becomes their only perceived route out of poverty. In such environments, distress is often hidden, risk-taking can increase, and help-seeking is delayed. What then does the architecture of protection look like is the question. To begin with protection first mindset. This means we begin sport for development, interventions around safety, dignity, referral readiness, and effective and evidence-based mental health support. It means coaches, teachers, peer leaders, community mentors are not expected to become clinicians, but they are equipped to recognize distress early, respond appropriately, reduce stigma, and connect young people to the right services. It means institutions do not work in silos. Ministries of sport, health, education, youth, and finance must see themselves as co-owners of athletic well-being. Also, alongside this, civil society, academia, philanthropies, and the private sector as well. This direction is fully aligned with the framework already before us. UNESCO's Fit for Life initiative has emphasized data-driven sport interventions, intersectoral coordination and collaboration, and youth well-being as a foundation for inclusive and resilient societies. The WHO MH gap guideline continues to demonstrate how non-specialist workers can be trained to identify and support mental health needs in low-resource settings. That's demonstrated in different settings that WHO MH gap guideline can provide us as those who are not specialists can provide basic support for the ones who are in need. Agenda 2063 reminds us that Africa's development vision depends on health and well-being, well-nourished citizens, as well as empowered youth. These are not abstract commitments, they are policy anchors for practical action. So, our task is not to invent a new language of concern. Our task is to institutionalize what already we know works. We need structured partnership between grassroots, academies, and local health providers. We need referral pathways that are simple, trusted, and functional. We need coach training that includes psychological first aid response, safe sport principles, and youth-sensitive communication. We need data-driven systems that help us measure resilience, risk, and recovery without violating dignity or confidentiality. We need financing models that reward long-term outcomes, not one-off activities. And we need policies that make mental well-being part of the standard by which your sport institutions are recognized and supported. This is why the voice assembled in this roundtable matters so much. Finance leaders can help us move from charity to Catholic investment. Researchers and academic institutions can help us translate evidence into tools that communities can use. Policy actors can build interagency pathways that outlast individual projects. Development partners can support scale, learning, and accountability. And youth themselves must be recognized not as passive beneficiaries, but as co-designers of the system that are meant to protect them. If we get this right, the outcomes will extend far beyond a single event. We can create a roadmap for scaling mental health and psychosocial support across academies and schools. We can advance coalition that brings together sport, health, and investment communities. We can support grant facilities that empower youth-led resilience initiatives. We can strengthen the case for certification, accountability, and safe sport standards. And we can help establish a future in which wellness data, ethical standards, and community trust became part of the value proposition for both public institutions and private partners. Let us be clear. Let's be clear. The future of Africa sport cannot be measured only in medals, contracts, or visibility. It must also the ability of young people to grow into healthy citizens and leaders. Every pitch, court, school field, and community academy be placed where the talent is nurtured without sacrificing well-being. Every partnership we build should move us closer to that standard. Okay. As we begin this conversation today, I invite all of us to think beyond programs and projects and to think instead about institutions, incentives, and interdependence. The architecture of protection will not be built by one sector alone. It will be built by all of us here with courage, evidence, and purpose. If we commit to take to that work, then we will not only move from play to protection, we will move from vulnerability to resilience and thrive, and from promise to lasting impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nahum. I was taking notes. As I mentioned, I'm going to be kind of learning during the process of moderation. And I like what you said. Medals does not equivalent to success. That's not how we're supposed to be weighing this. And I know, Dorcas has done a thumbs up, so I completely understand where she's coming from. And I like the fact that you also mentioned that protection is development. So we need to pretty much look at the human being from a 360-degree lens, right? Before you go, while you were talking, I was taking a few notes, but I also saw Shadrach nodding quite a bit, and I will come to him on before he starts his remarks on why he was nodding. That means there's something he agreed with. But now, if Grassroots Sports in Africa says it cares about the young people, and I'm assuming that's what they all say, what does real protection now, especially from the mental health and psychosocial support, look like? Maybe before you kind of turn off your microphone and your camera, what would this actually look like in real life, in practice, from where you're seated? If Grassroots Sports in Africa says it cares about young people, what would that actually look like from your end?
Thank you very much, Lisa, again. Grassroots sports in Africa is to mean nurturing the young, or the ones who are the ones who are succeeding, the ones who are, replacing the ones who are old. Recently, as you miss, as we all understand, athletics in Africa is focused on the seasonal base. Funding is seasonal, that's focused on bringing medals and bringing these successes into their country. However, they are forgotten for a long time, and their mental well-being is so forgotten. Therefore, grassroots athletics is to mean, investing on the children, so that they do have mindset, that is the mindset, as well as the well-being aspect of it, so that they could able to move parallelly. Their mental well-being and their protection aspects is kept, as well as their development and bringing medals is also going in another direction. I mean, the same direction. Therefore, we can have these two things, we can see these two things parallelly. Okay, so this could be happen only if we could be able to invest on the generation. So this is my point. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Nahum. Don't drop during the call. I'm pretty sure some of the team has questions. I know somebody from the chat was asking about, do you have slides for what you presented? Is there some sort of a write-up they can get their hands on? Already people are taking points. And that's what I like about participants. They also want to quote you exactly what you've said. So thank you very much, Nahum. I'll go directly into the two speakers that are supposed to actually drive this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for Nahum, he's on the call. Please drop your chat, direct it to him. He will be keeping an eye on those. And also next round, he'll come on camera to respond to some of them. So feel free to type it. Let me bring in the two doctors, right? Now this is where this conversation becomes very serious. And we've had the feedback from Nahum. He's just opened it up for us, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk about something serious, but we do not want to make it sound like it's a 47-page policy. You know how you start reading a policy and you go to the final page? We don't want that to be today. So today's conversation is about how we move from good ideas and good intentions, how we're moving from play to protection. If you got the YIDP concept, then you understand. In other words, how do we make mental health support part of the team sheet and not just something we remember after a crisis, not after one of the players commits suicide, one of the players goes through a tough time and they cannot bounce back. How do we make this part of the day-to-day activities? So I'll bring in on camera both of the doctors. I'd like them to just introduce themselves real quick, but in a different way. So Dr. Richard, Dr. Shadrach, quick one. Tell us something that we don't know about you. I Googled, I know a lot about you, but this is LinkedIn. They only give you the professional, rosy things. So let us know, Dr. Richard, what is it that I don't know about you? A lot of people don't know here. Maybe your close family knows, but we don't know. Just share, because it's a safe space as we started off. Over to you.
I believe what maybe probably people don't know is that I do care always. And that's the lesson as to why, my education, I think, are focused on trying to help young people, not just only in sports, but in all other areas. So what people don't know about me is the inner heart. And the inner heart is the real Richard. Okay, thank you.
Oh, the real Richard cares. The doctor cares. Well, lovely. Let's see what the Dr. Shadrach will top that out. Doc, you're going against a person who actually cares. What is it that we don't know about you?
Wow.
Dr. Shadrach.
This changes all the narrative. A lot of I know a lot of information is out there, but hey, Lizzie, one of the things that has since caught my attention myself is just how we treat mental health, and something that a lot of people still don't know is that I took a deliberate effort early last year to go back to just study neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience at the university in South Africa, to understand just how does brain work and where does mental health plug in. And this has since informed a lot of our conversations around what you are now calling brain capital, which is a combination of brain health and brain skills. In Africa, we are still stuck with brain health, which is where mental health and psychiatric and neurological diseases lie, which we are still addressing. The rest of the world has now moved to brain skills because now they are already preparing their young people, their workforce, on how to adapt to the evolving artificial intelligence and how to cope with the overload of information. So that's probably a new thing, Lizzie, that I did already share with both of you.
I didn't know about that. Thank you so much for sharing. And this is what I like. Thank you, YIDP, for organizing this. I like when an expert is an expert. You can't just say, yeah, I know this, and you have not studied it. So really do appreciate that, Dr. Shadrach. And it's great. I mean, I've also gone back to school, but I love money. So mine is more money related, sorry. But you guys actually do care about what we're discussing today. And I like what Nahum said. And he kept on it reiterating. Of course, there are gaps, but he mentioned something that we're all facing right now, the financial gap. And that financial gap looks like if it's not there, a lot of things can be moved within the sports arena and a lot of things will fall into place. So Dr. Shadrach, let's talk more about money, not in the sense that if we had it, would it fix the mental health situation that we have in the sports arena, but around money makes things move. We know they say money makes the world go round, including panel discussions like this one. So let me come to you and ask you, what will it take for mental health in grassroots sports to stop being treated like the side salad of sports? You know, it's mental health, okay, but we want the medals. You know, it's all about who gets to the finish line, first, second, or third. Nobody cares about the last person on the line. We will mention you're the last one, but nobody really cares. It's number 1 to 3. The medals are from number 1 to 3. So what will it take for mental health now to stop being treated like that side salad of sport and let it be the main dish that we're having, the main course? Dr. Shadrach, any thoughts on how we can go about that?
Once again, thank you, Lizzie. And I was listening to Nahum speak about this, and you rightfully noticed that I was nodding, especially when he was mentioning how we need more innovative financing models that focus majorly on outcomes. And every time we hear about these words, our heads rush on how do we get to fit in, what do they even mean, and how do they get it? And at this point, let me mention that at Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance, which is the organization I work with, consistently engages, because we are a member-based network of impact investors and innovators. And this cuts across different thematic areas: education, health, agriculture, climate. And I have the privilege to lead the health programs for that matter. And what we consistently see are investors asking for a number of ideas that they can actually invest in that would be measurable. And the mental health has not been easy to discuss how to measure mental health outcomes within investors. But how do we honestly move from this? Coming to your question, because I had Colin speak, and one of the questions that got to me, and I want all of us to have this at the back of our mind for a moment, that when did we actually decide that mental health for an African athlete, for example, is worth less than the logo on the jerseys, on their chest? And I say this right now because across football pitches, say in Nigeria, all those athletics tracks that we do have here in Kenya, basketball courts. We do have, a number of African athletes that perform at world-class level while carrying the weight of national hope on their shoulders. But with all this, there's zero structured psychosocial support that they are getting. Yet we see a number of huge sponsorship checks that keep coming in for jerseys, for the stadiums being built, for a number of deals that comes with visibility for huge corporate. And because you started this by mentioning that we can be more honest about this conversation today as the nature of YIDP conversation. Where are we as Africa? Before we start talking about how do we move sports to that part, we need to take stock of where we are, because we know Africa produces some of the most gifted athletes on the planet. I mean, we've seen, a number of examples ranging from, Eliud Kipchoge. We have seen the likes of, Didier Drogba's, the likes of Caster Semenya's. We have a number of other young people that are coming up to place leads we have seen in the past. This is extraordinary. But what we see is that behind every record that is broken or a trophy that is lifted, I like that Naon mentioned this. There are stories that are not told, stories of burnout, depression, anxiety, careers that are being cut short, not merely by injury, but by some of the invisible wounds that we cannot see. So until we are able to quantify how this looks like and demonstrate the willingness of investing more on the health, on the mental capacity, on the cognitive ability of the athletes, of our young people through sports, then we are not able to crowd in finances into this space. And we know that in Africa, we have, the stigma is quite high that is placed on mental health. People don't talk about this. Think of it like this. There is no soccer or football club or even a basketball team that would ask a player to compete when their leg is broken or without a medical team or an ambulance on standby. But yet every other day, these sports people, these young people are competing with broken minds and no mental health support at all, because this is the status quo. There is zero financing, that is going directly into this. So that is the painful irony. But I must tell you, from where I sit, because I have the privilege of talking to a number of investment organizations, development finance organizations, investors and funders, family offices that belong to AVPA network, I do know that the money exists. This money exists in our banks here locally, in insurance companies, development finance institutions with the impact investors, but it's not flowing directly into this space because we do not have a bridge. And this is, Lizzie, where I come to how we move this. We do not have a bridge between the capital and the capital and financing and the sports and mental health through sports. And that is because there has not been enough work done on how we can measure the outcomes of mental health investments through the young people. That is why we do now have concepts that we will be familiar with at the end of this conversation that we call blended finance and social impact bonds, so that we can support the investors who are willing to put money into this space, but don't know how. Because I tell you, the granting landscape, the financing landscape has changed. We have seen a lot of aid cuts in grants. And so now to get a funder or a donor who is willing to put in money to support a mental health cause, the first thing they would ask you is, how are we going to know that we are successful? What are some of the metrics that you're going to demonstrate to me at the end of this that you've been able to achieve? This is where blended finance come in, and social impact bonds. And for the next part of the conversation, I will be able to unpack what that looks like, Liz. But I want to stop in here to prompt further conversations from it. Over to you, Lizzie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very curious about your last statement. So how do you show that, yes, I've put money, it was covering mental health? How was it successful? That's a good question, given that we're Africans, and yet mental health, just accepting that is a problem that we have. It's still a problem. We even if we do a random hands up right now and ask, are you in your right mental state, or do you feel like you're having mental health issues? I don't think a lot of people will be willing to raise the electronic hand, right? It's still a big problem, and measuring that success, it's quite a difficult thing. Now I do understand why you went back to school, Doc, for this neuroscience. I don't know what else. I just got neuroscience, but I totally understand. There's a lot of ball game. There's a lot of things that need to come into play. But don't go away. I'm getting very confused. I'm learning. I'm taking notes, so I'm all over the place. Doc, you care, and you care so much. You're here to have this conversation with us. We've seen, what I like is how YIDP kind of arranged this discussion. Nahom said we need money, we need partnerships. Dr. Shadrach just reemphasized that even if we do need the money, we get it. There has to be some structures put in place. But yes, we need partnership that goes beyond sports, education, financing. There's so many ministries that need to be interconnected. A lot of things that need to be in place even after we get this money by itself. But Dr. Richard, I was looking at you the whole time, and I wanted to get this part where you kept on moving your body to this side, coming back, and so that means that you're very much invested and you really do care about the conversation going on. And just to jump to you, Dr. Nabiri, research is very powerful. Somebody in the chat was also asking about data. Where do we get this data? How can we prove that there's actually issues around mental health and sports? Maybe we're having these discussions that there is no data and maybe there's no problem whatsoever. But sometimes communities hear evidence-based and worry a 90-slide PowerPoint is coming, and I'm so excited you guys didn't come with PowerPoint slides. I was worried about that. But from a sports psychology and research lens, how do we turn evidence into practical tools that coaches, schools, grassroots programmers, even the investors that Dr. Shadrach was talking about, can actually use without needing a PhD to decode them? How do we make sure that evidence is clear that this is a problem? We're investing, but when you're giving us money, also have a budget for mental health. What would be your thoughts around that? And I do appreciate the way you're moving. That means you had something that was really itchy. You wanted to get it out. I could see you, but I couldn't stop Dr. Shadrach halfway. Yeah, but over to you now, Dr. Navira.
Okay, thanks a lot. Actually, it's a very, very good discussion, and it's coming at the right time. Number one, I would like to say that my area of specialization actually is in sports and exercise psychology. And my area of research, again, also focuses more or less on those areas of maybe exercise and mental health. Other presentations also make them on overtraining and also mental health. And what I believe in is that the first thing to appreciate is sports, and this is the truth, contribute immensely to the development of the mental health. We start from there. And actually, for the audience, we're not just only talking about the big sports. Let's start even from the normal walking that people, in fact, engage in. They all contribute to that. But when we are talking about the sports now, first of all, we correct it here, because we might be talking about the issue of the mental health maybe from such kind of a forum, and we think, you know, the people who are coaching outside there, they know about the issues of the mental health. Because mental health, of course, revolves around, number one, it has to do with maybe probably how do you coach as a person? What is the coaching environment? The environment itself, in fact, that is surrounding the player, or the environment that is surrounding the athlete himself. So when you're talking about that mental health, let's first of all understand that we might be talking about people who do not know what mental health is all about. Because even the celebration you're talking about this month, you're celebrating about the issue of the mental health, more or less it might be focusing more on maybe workers in other areas, but actually not in the area of sports. That's a key thing. So number one, when like us now, you've talked about how maybe probably can people also collaborate, etc. Like us now, the reason as to why we're here, number one, I even thank you people for even inviting us also to share so that we can also learn. Like now we have partnered, that is UNESCO, and KU has been able to get what we normally call a chair, that is UNESCO chair in inclusive and sustainable physical education and for sports for community development. We know very well we are training teachers, and that teachers now who in the future also become our ambassadors now when it comes now to the issues of advocating maybe issues to do with sports. So when you're talking about collaboration might just only go, not just only even in terms of the funding. The big question will be, how far are you willing now to go so that you can also advocate what you want when it comes actually to the issues of the mental health? Like now, KU has already partnered, that is with UNESCO. And for the next 4 years now, we'll be doing massive research so that now we try now to spread the gospel now to the people that when you're talking about mental health, this is where the issue is. And for us, because we train what we normally call not athletes, but athletes, that is maybe people who are supposed to go there and then now take the sport over, like people who are doing physical education, exercise and sport science. So we are trying now to try to see whether we can come up with a mechanism, or now we are supposed now to empower those people so that as they go outside there, then they can now be our ambassadors now of trying now to advocate for the issues now of the mental health. But let me come back again to what I said. There is one thing I've always been saying, because I've coached for almost 30 years and I've also been researching. Most of the coaches, and I'm sorry to say this, they coach the sport, they do not coach the athlete. In fact, I've always been saying, when you are coaching, do not coach the sport, you coach the athlete. What am I talking about when I'm talking about an athlete? It's not just about the physical performance. A human being is an emotional being. There is the emotional aspect of a human being. There is the intellectual part of a human being. And we're talking about all these now. This is when now we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about depression, etc., and all that. But most of the coaches, when they go now into the field, what they end up now doing is just now to give the tactical, the skills, etc., and all that. But the key thing, I've always been advocating kindly for the coaches and for those people who are around who might be there. Kindly note that you are coaching a human being. When you're coaching a human being, you still have to cater for the well-being actually of that athlete. That's very, very key and actually very, very vital. Do you also cater for what we normally call the individual difference? That's what I'm normally calling coaching the athlete. When I'm coaching like now Rize or Tai, who is already, it might be quite different from when I'm coaching Dudo. You know, we're talking about the gender issues. We go ahead and talk about the gender violence, but we're not trying to look at the response of the coaching from the ladies now to the men. Like you can read maybe about what we normally call the psychosocial aspect of coaching female and athlete. These are two different people altogether. Are you catering for that individual difference? And not just only for the gender itself. Two athletes will be quite different from one. Meaning that my impact of maybe my coaching style might be quite different from Stacey Ruduaro, maybe Jemba. So the moment you now realize you're dealing with a human being, and there is something that now surrounds this human being, you normally now start doing what I normally call, you start coaching the athlete rather than now, in fact, you coach what we normally call the prayer. Another key thing we also need to know is that we're talking about mental health here. But when you try to look at the mental health, maybe probably we're trying to download it from the Western world. But for us, we are Africans. Let's look at now a very, very simple issue like the boy child, whom we are forgetting all through, and who, in fact, is more or less impacted by the issue of the mental health, for sure, than even the girl child. The boy child, we are taught at the end of the day, when you go there, even if you're injured, you're not supposed to do A, B, C, D. You have to win it all. So all the pressure, in fact, is on that young man. If you're injured, you don't have to say. There is the pressure for the performance. But the big question is now, if you don't win and then you lose, what happens at the end of the day? Do we take care of that? So we're saying we have to move the discussion from not just only the element of the mental health from what we read from the books. We try to customize in our African context. What can affect a lady in an African context? And in fact, I'm so sorry to say this. We are focusing too much on that, maybe on the maybe young ladies, and actually we're even forgetting about we are also forgetting about now our young men. And the scenario is in the near future, I'm also seeing the opposite also happening, where maybe we are going to empower young ladies. These are the same young ladies who are also going to marry and empower and maybe young men. And what will happen? The same kind of the gender we are talking about here will still manifest itself. So sports, as I've said, if used in a moderation, can be beneficial to what we normally call, towards maybe the development of the mental health in moderation. But again, we also say again, sports, again, don't overtrain. Do not give too much. Because when you give too much at the end of the day, what you end up doing, you also end up also affecting the same mental health. So kindly let's try to look at the discussion as we discussed. We try to unearth us from the African context, the way we bring up our young people. Is it also contributing towards maybe the issues of the mental health? Us as coaches, as I've said, are we coaching the athlete or are we coaching the sport? The moment now we understand those dynamics, then we're likely now to unearth that. Now to answer your question, Lizzie, about the issue of the funding, I was listening, my friend actually was saying, I think the best you can do and we can do is to collaborate. And also maybe probably look for areas where you can also collaborate, like what we have done at Kenyatta University. Because we have come to realize this is a problem actually that needs actually to be unearthed. And we have collaborated now with the UNESCO. Out of the UNESCO, in fact, they have linked us now with this group. So through that, you can see we're still now building up what we normally call that collaboration. The first thing is, first of all, the collaborations. And then maybe as we also build up the collaborations, let's also maybe also try to disseminate the information that we have. Not just only to, that maybe leads to the people, because most of us Africans, we generate a lot of information, but we do not end up now disseminating that information. So the key thing is, kindly let's try to look mental health from our perspective, and then we try to build up on that. And the question I asked again, and this one is what I'll end up with. I asked a question. Do people know what is mental health? I remember last year, we hosted the university, the UNESCO, I think it was a UNESCO, whatever sports day. That's in Kenyatta University. We had a round table meeting the way we are having it today. And we had maybe now young people, that maybe both male and also females, coaches, etc. and all that. And what came out from the whole thing was, there is what you're calling now, like what you normally call sexual abuse. But these people do not even know whether in fact it exists. Do we have policies that also guide the same? And for us, like now, that's one of the things that we want to come up with. We come up with a policy that can also guide like things like in what we're normally calling like the gender, maybe whatever based violence, actually within the sport itself. So I like what you people you are doing, coming up with such kind of roundtable meetings, because we might be thinking that people know when you're talking about issues to do with gender-based violence, we might be talking about people know about what you normally call the mental health. But the moment you sit down with those people, you realize at the end of the day, they don't have. And they do not even understand whatever in fact we're trying now to maybe probably to talk about. So for me, I'll just maybe probably stop from there, and maybe probably in case there's any question, I know we are still going on with the discussion. Okay, thank you.
I love the discussions, and the reason why I love the discussion is because of the comments that are coming in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on you, Coach D. Williams. I will bring you up real quick. Thank you, Dorcas Amakobe. I've seen even the caliber of guests that you have, YIDP. I can see psychologists here. I can see nurses. I can see CSOs in the room, and I appreciate the comments that are coming in. And we'll do something real out of the script. As I said, we're not going to literally follow the webinar rules. If you feel like you have a question or a comment when the two doctors are talking, and of course, out of the keynote that we got, please have your camera on. And the minute I see your face, I will definitely call upon you. But there is a comment that has come in, and I appreciate Dr. I don't know, Coach D. Williams. I'm hoping you're a coach. I'm not going to assume, but I'm going to call you real quick on this. You've had a lot of amazing comments that you've been making, especially around the discussions that are ongoing. Coach D, are you there? Just a quick one, just to see whether you're comfortable enough to kind of chime in. Your thoughts were well noted during the discussions. If you can take a minute just to give your thoughts before we go to a second round with the speakers on what's going on.
Awesome. Lizzie, thank you so much. We actually connected at the last YIDP
There you
roundtable.
were. Yeah, I was like, yeah, Coach
And I was
D,
able to
sounds
share,
familiar.
yeah, the breathing meditation that we do here. I'm from New York City. So shout out to Collins for just continuing to, push the envelope on how we get to talk about this throughout the diaspora. My comment, I really agreed with the doctor, just in terms of whole person coaching in 2018. Here in New York City, I led the charge on coach training because I felt that, to many of the comments said today, we got to train our coaches. We have to train, and as well as, I like to say, inspire as opposed to empower. Here in the Western world, they have literally marketed that word to the ground. And so now it's become very performative. But when we inspire people to think, move, and feel differently, not only about themselves, but about the people around them and the work that they're doing with these people. Now, what we're talking about is a culture shift. And at least here throughout the diaspora, what I've noticed is, because is so much difference in how people think about a certain subject, that even the very talk of mental health induces anxiety. It's just so different for everyone based on what they heard, what their own experiences. Even the comment you said when you were like, hey, if we asked if you had a mental health issue, would you press the button? No, because it just doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good. It makes you feel targeted, right? And so one thing that we've been working here within Get Fit Fly Right is changing the language so people are inspired to be more aware of not just the state of their mental well-being, but also the possibility of restoration. And when we start talking like that, now it's not just about checking on wellness when something goes wrong, but now we're creating a daily intention to it, right? Just like in football, we have to practice our dribbling, right? Just like in basketball, we have to practice our shooting. Well, in the world of health, we have to practice our well-being. We have to practice being aware, understanding our emotions, and then our leaders, our coaches, our I would say our communities, our elders. I love seeing that in the comments. Like, our elders are so important. Having that language and creating opportunities for young people to share what they're experiencing without judgment, and also too sometimes without the need to fix it. I think sometimes, at least here in the States, we have so many adults who, because mental health is such a big issue, they're trying to fix these children. And now the children are like, I don't want to talk to you. So,
Anymore, yeah.
all that to say there's a fine balance. And I think that starts with language.
Sure. I do appreciate Coach D always for your input, and kind of that brings out the Western perspective. But we're talking about also, I appreciate what you've just mentioned. There's a time we just need to listen and not actually talk when they give the input. But we were talking about financing. We moved to collaboration. Then we said, hey, let's take a step back. And thank you, Dr. Richard, for that. When we took that step back of just understanding what mental health is, because it's always good just to take a step back and realize what we're talking about. I saw Grace on camera. I'm assuming, Grace, you didn't want to make a remark, and just giving you a last shout out before we go back to Dr. Shadrach. I don't know whether Grace is still there. Oh, no worries. Well, we can circle back on that. But just a quick one, Dr. Shadrach. So what is the one thing we keep calling a challenge that is actually a design failure? My question is more around if protection, finance, and evidence, data that we know there's a problem with the athletes, the mental health issues does exist, the psychosocial support does not exist. Where do these three meet in practice? And where are they still working like distant cousins at a family gathering? How do we have all three, finance, evidence, protection, all three under one particular discussion, and don't make them look like distant cousins while we're having a gathering and we're discussing sports in totality? What would be your input, Dr. Shadrach, on that?
Yes, thank you, Liz, and I'm quite, so impressed with the, input from Dr. Dambiri about, how we focus on all this, coaching, and from Coach D. The conversation is quite enlightening. I'm learning a lot myself. And back to your question, Lizzie, we have been, treating, mental health, psychosocial support, and all this in isolation for quite a long time. And what we did not already figure out is the importance of integrating mental health into all other sectors to make sure that no single one is, treated in isolation, because it works as a system. And the nature of systems is that when one misfunctions, then the long-term outcome also, you do not get to achieve the long-term outcome because part of the system is not working. And this comes back to what I was mentioning earlier on our lack of structured measurement of the outcomes we want to see. And so because we're already here, we have based a lot of our interventions from what we see in the West, and we brought a lot of concepts from there without necessarily focusing on what perspectives directly impact, for example, an African athlete. And when I talk about this, I'm looking at how we can possibly know or even identify when one is, depicting signs of burnout at workplace or even in sports. Okay, so we have not figured out how to integrate all this to make this concept be treated as a whole instead of parts. And talking about these outcomes, how often do we sit back to look at the number of, or the dropout rates from school among the young people that, for example, are in sports? How do we ever sit down and even discuss the sudden drop in academic performance of a young person without necessarily, talking about the lack of studying or laxity in work or being lagging behind. So how do we sit down within the African perspective and say, this is what outcomes we are likely to see and we want to see. And then let us focus on how to drive those together without treating mental health in isolation, Liz.
I hear you. I hear you. And while you were speaking, I just realized something. When the number 1, 2, and 3s are given medals and the presidents in country recognize them and give them houses and give them cars, are they also given medical insurance, which covers their health and covers their mental? Just a question. I don't know, Collins, whether you have an idea whether they're given a package that covers their mental health and covers their well-being as human beings. I mean, it's fine to give me a car. It's fine for you to give me a house. I really do appreciate that. But as Doc you've mentioned, there are signs, there are burnouts, they've been training, and before they got, and some train too much that they don't even make it to the top 3. So there's always that, regret and disappointment that comes. So do we have measures, structures put in place in such a way that you're told, you'll get them next time. This is not the end of the road. Like that psychosocial support is really very crucial. So Dr. Richard, let's carry on the conversation around what Dr. Shadrach has just mentioned, that there are signs. There are some things that are very visible. As a psychologist, you can also see when somebody speaks to you, you can pick out some things. How can we equip the coaches not to just coach and teach the tactics, but also be in such a way that they can pick those signs that shows that this person is not okay, this person is going through something. And after that, seeing the signs, what next? My question is, until now, we've been winning so many medals. We must have put some sort of structure in place. If you see they're training and, they're not eating well or they're thinking too much, they're aloof every time their conversations are ongoing. How do we make sure that the coaches understand how to pick the signs? And after picking those signs, what are those steps that could be in place or maybe are in place? And ladies and gentlemen, if you're here and your country has an amazing system that works, feel free to kind of just unmute, let us know how it's working. It's all about South to South learning. But Dr. Richard, I'd love to hear that process of recognizing and referral until you get the person back to understanding that it's okay not to be okay in the sports arena. Over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I'll begin from where we are. Number one, you forgive everybody who is a coach in this forum, because performance is what we put most. We forget about even fun is part and the parcel of the sporting whatever. That's maybe this will involve fun. That's how now the issue of the aspect of where now the sports are contributing towards the development of the mental health now comes in. But all over, and the reason as to why I've been I even chose the career of academics and not the career of coaching. Most of the people tell you, including my friend Dr. Sandrak, that you go somewhere, even maybe these big teams, your stay in that team is totally pegged on, are you winning? If you're not winning, the team, in fact, has no business with you. So your focus, you might find that maybe, yes, it is winning at all cost. And you have even seen it actually even in our home athletes. That's maybe these who are doping. That's maybe these, I think, who are even making our whatever reputation to be, I think, to have some issues that is in Kenya. Because even for you to dope, to do doping, it means you want to win at all costs, without forgetting even the effects that we're likely to get now from maybe probably whatever now you are injecting or maybe taking actually into your body. So that's exactly what I want to say. But for us now, I don't know how we are going now to focus now the research in such a way that people now start now seeing sports, not just only in terms of the end result. That maybe is the aspect of the performance, where they start now understanding there are so many benefits, in fact, that accrues now from the sport. But now I'm saying this for the sake of the coaches, because all I know is the coaches, they're already in that kind of environment where they have to deliver. But now I come now to your question. As a coach, how can you know that maybe probably everything is not okay actually with your athletes? I normally say, don't go to even the data that is there in the science. Go for the simple science. You can even look at something we normally call like moons of an athlete. And again, for you to do this, there's always a skill I normally tell me, that is the coaches. You have to be observant of your players. At the same time, you have to understand your players. If you fail to do this, you have no business, in fact, in coaching. And you're not taking the well-being, which you're not trying to promote, actually using this forum. Like the moons of that athletes. Those people who have done the studies, including myself, on the mood state of athletes, trying to look at overtraining and the impact it has, that is on that we believe on the athletes. There's very, very simple things like anger. I'll give you very, very simple things. You've been having a player who is so good and who has maybe been respecting you all through. Then you realize at the end of the day, that player, in one way or another, has started now behaving in a way he can even shout at others or even shout at you. Anger is a very, very simple mood. But for you might take it, it's like maybe probably it is like something that just only comes and then it passes. For you, I tend to believe you're not a sports psychologist. I like it to say, no, this person now probably is lacking manners. But that anger is telling you there is a problem within the training itself. Remember, I said, why do issues of the mental health in fact arise? Number one, it has to do with environment itself. We normally say sport environment may intentionally normalize what you call emotion suppression. Environment itself. And I said, if I'm coaching, that is Sandra, and I'm coaching you, what kind of the language do I use? And for those people, maybe probably who have looked at the psychophysical dimensions of both coaching both female and male athletes, you realize there's something that I can tell you. If I tell somebody like Sandra, you just only take for granted. But for you as a lady, you're likely to find that maybe you take it from the heart. So the big question is now, do you look at those signs, anger? Something like a fatigue, which is both physiological and psychological. Somebody comes to us today, I'm fatigued. Come next week, he tells you, I'm fatigued. You won't know very well. Sports are supposed, maybe probably when you research aspect of the vigor. Once I go, maybe probably I practice. I hope I'm not using the jargons. And then you take even a shower, you feel there is that kind of the relief. But you realize now, even if you go and then you go and then you shower, and then you come back, the aspect of the fatigue now still remains. That one tells you there's something that is wrong, either within the training itself, that's a reality on the ground, or at the end of the day, you're not giving that person enough time to rest. Because we normally say balance between training and resting sessions to cater for the mental well-being of that person. So I'm saying simple things. I'm tired. The aspect of the depression. And here I'm not talking about the clinical depression. I know my friend who was presenting might go for that section of the clinical depression. I'm just only talking about the depressed mode. This person is not happy. Forget about, I'm not saying that you go now to the scientific way of looking at things. I'm looking at things that maybe probably I can look at you normally. Like Otai, if I've known you for a long time and I've been coaching you for a month, I can try to look at your mood and say, wait a minute, everything is not okay, actually with what? Maybe with Otai. So I'm saying, don't go for those complicated things that people do. I cannot now take my student and try to take them into the ramp to know that. I just want to observe those small things like the mood, that aspect of the elevation of the anger, the issue of the elevated fatigue. Somebody is depressed. This person has been happy all through within this month. I can maybe say, wait a minute, Collins at the end of the day is not happy. So those are small things, and I normally call them small signs. But if you're careful and you're observant, because you normally say one of the most important skill of a coach is to be observant of your players. If you observe for a very, very long time, then you find, wait a minute, there's a problem with this person. Then that's when now you come up and then maybe you involve that player. And in essence, I'm saying kindly, and I will also repeat this statement again. It's not just only about coaching. Even when you're coaching, you're supposed to be a counselor. You're coaching human beings. But the moment I'm coming, maybe probably for that coaching, Who knows? There might be something that could have happened at home. But for you as a coach, what do you want? You want me probably to perform. So the key thing is, at the bottom line is, kindly for those people who are in the coaching environment, when it comes to the mental health issues, you don't need rocket science. Just only a very key simple thing I normally call observation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. You really do care. And I appreciate how you started by introducing yourself. And I do also love the fact that you take us some steps back. It's the little things that you can relate to before it becomes the psychological, analyzing and stuff. But we have Nahum. I don't know whether he's still on the call or he's dropped off. We have so many comments coming in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about moving from play to protection. How do we look at the athlete from a 360-degree lens? Collins, I don't know whether Nahum is still on the call. I wanted to just bring his insights, see whether he has.
Unfortunately, Nahom has jumped into another call.
No worries. No worries. Thank you so much. I think we'll just carry on, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I don't know what to say. I've been learning so much. I've been taking notes, but I also have that opportunity where I can shift things. Collins wouldn't agree with it, but I can just call in somebody to make a comment and go back to the discussion. So, as a moderator, I have so many privileges that I'm making use of today. So let me just open it up.
Lizzie can do something very interesting. I've also seen Olela is raising his hands, but you see the discussion that we've had so far, it's been firing, and I know people are exhausted. I just want us to relax a little bit, just do breathing out.
The mental health bit, yes.
Coach D is here. Coach D, are you around, or you've just dropped?
Coach
D, are you around?
Hello.
Yeah. Sia will call you in a few. Coach D is here.
Maybe Coach D, you can take us through the session, maybe 2 minutes of breathing in and out. I'll really appreciate that.
Sure.
And a bit of stretching because we've been seated because we cannot preach water and we take wine.
Okay. Well, I will say I'm in New York, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm definitely not drinking any wine.
Okay.
But I will. Yeah, no, not a problem. I love that. Just so everyone knows, I am on camera, but I am getting dressed because I'm on my way to the But interestingly enough, I just put on my shirt, which says "Just Breathe." So I would just like everyone to stand up. And you're just going to roll your shoulders. And through every movement that we do for the next 2 minutes, I just want you to just breathe. Taking in those deep breaths. Allowing the air to fully exhale out of the body. You want to make sure that not only your chest, but your stomach, your diaphragm, you want to breathe from our diaphragm. So we're going to take just 5 deep breaths throughout that 2-minute period. And I want you to continue to roll your shoulders. Two more times, roll. And now we're just going to move side to side. Letting our spines wiggle a little bit. Let that spine move. And then next, we're going to bring our arms up. And as I like to tell the kiddies, reach for the clouds. Everything we're doing is on a 4 count, just so you know. And then we're going to reach back, hold, and forward. Taking deep breaths with every movement. Last one. Hold that last breath. And exhale loudly. Last deep breath. You're going to pull the air in. Hold for 2 seconds. And when you exhale, release loudly. Allow for 2 calming breaths. And come back when you are ready.
I don't know. I'm done for the day.
Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank
I
you,
know,
Coach
Coach,
T.
we can go and go and go and go.
I was in my zone already. But thank you so much for that break. Good luck with work. We'll let you kind of change and get prepared. See you later. Thanks, Coach. Wow. Okay, now I
Okay,
feel
go
like I'm
ahead,
done
Lizzie.
for some reason. Okay, okay, great. Thank you. So let's open it up for discussions. Let's have the next 20 minutes Q&A. Interact with Dr. Richard and Dr. Shadrach, please. And the first hand up, I can tell it's Tony Olela. Welcome, Tony. And then after that, I saw Sia. So we'll start with Tony and then we go to Sia. Please direct your question to any of the speakers, or if it's a comment, and then we'll go to Dr. So Tony, over to you. You're on mute, Tony. There you are. Lovely. Nice
Sorry.
seeing you again.
Thank you. Nice to you, Lizzie. Just a
We can hear you.
minute.
There it is. There's Gen Zs with the
Good.
technology. We have to. Did you see what he just did, ladies and gentlemen? Readjusted and went all blackout and stuff. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lizzie, and colleagues at the team for putting this together. My name is Rula Tony. I work at UNESCO General Office for Eastern Africa, and I've been following through the conversation with a little bit of network hiccups, but it's great to have these conversations, and I'm glad we, for the panelists. As I was following through, I could hear mentions about mental health for players, and looking into the systems of sports. Personally, being a sports person, I don't know who takes care of the mental health of the coaches. Sometimes I sit back and ask myself, how does unresolved stress, burnout, and personal pressures in coaches influence the way they communicate and even relate to the athletes? Like, do they force push athletes to just train for competition? And also, can coaches also truly understand and support athletes when they're also struggling with mental health issues? So maybe I will just ask to the panelists, what are the systems that are there that support the mental well-being of the coaches even before they put themselves into the shoe of supporting the well-being of the players? Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Tony. I think this is the one psychologist who asked who takes care of the psychologist after going through the session and speaking to all the patients. So somebody also has to look after you, Dr. Richard. So that would be a good question to answer. Let's go to the next person. Dorcas, you're on camera. So over to you.
Thanks, Lizzie, and thanks, Collins, for organizing such a great conversation. So I think my question is to Dr. Karani, especially because some of the things that he has highlighted are very fundamental moving forward. And also from Shadrach's perspective around financing and what we need to prepare for us to be able to attract financing in sport, especially on mental health. My question is that a lot of the issues that we are talking about now are missing within our systemic or our systems structure, like the planning of sports in Kenya. If you look at the sports policies, the sports act, how institutions internally have developed their policies, And if we are to make changes or make structural changes, I think it needs to come especially from the top, because most of us who are the grassroots, as much as we are trying to work with athletes at grassroots level, provide them with protective factors, but eventually they leave when they become like pro soccer players. They will eventually leave our space. So a lot of the challenge they face is when they go out there, they would say the world is different. So what are some of the things that we can do, especially to look at the policy level and influence how policy is structured, both from a health perspective around mental health, which is still an area that we are developing, and also from a sports perspective and other areas, education, the education system, in Kenya, which also hosts a lot of these sports programs, needs to be reformed. What can we do around that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question, Dorcas. Really do appreciate it, and it all boils down to policies. I know Sia was here. Sia, I'd want to bring you into the discussion. I don't know whether you're still there before I pick the other two questions. Sia,
Yes,
I know there's something that the East African Community Mental Health Network is doing, and you're trying to come up with a policy brief around mental health status within the East African region. Maybe we can come to you. You can let us know about the question that you wanted. And thank you very much for joining the discussions today.
Thank you so much. Okay. My name is Sia Edward. I am the regional coordinator of the Eastern Africa Community Mental Health Network based here in Tanzania. And the network has been existing for the past 1 year and a half, maybe to say so. And apparently, we have been looking out on how to strengthen the mental health advocates in countries within the 8 member states of the Eastern Africa. The only thing is, the member states do not have the regional commitment on mental health. Each one is operating on their own understanding, and they are also maybe advocating on the actual implementation or the actual process that is existing within the country. In that matter, the network had seen how mental health within the region is so important. And we just came up with the mental health advocates on the mental health policy for the East Africa community. And we are expecting to have this policy in the next coming 2 years, 2026, 2027, and to be in actual implementation as of 2028. And we are in the initial stages of collecting information and data from the communities, and of which it is open to anyone to contribute their ideas, their thoughts. Maybe what are the issues that we eventually want to see around the sports in mental health, youth in mental health. We eventually expect the communities to bring in issues that are relevant. As we all know that mental health is not a clinical issue, it's a role of everyone within the community to ensure that they take part. As I am also part of the WHO technical working group of family intervention for psychosis, we are currently in the process of developing a global guideline and the TOR for provision of mental health around the families, that we want every member of the family within our communities, within our countries, in our region, and in the global level. Everyone has to have an understanding of what is real has to do within the community and what is has to do with mental health. If you have a person with a disorder in your family, what role do you have to support that person? And if you have an individual within your working environment, within the sports, within the school, you as an individual that you're being capacitated with the capacity from the WHO, the TR that is going to be developed, what role do you have At what level do you have to offer referral? At what level do you have to offer a basic mental health aid to that individual? And maybe at what level do you need an advocate to make some changes within the community? Like before, the policies and guidelines that were directed by the WHO down, they were just like top-down direction where everything has to be clinical. But now the WHO sees that mental health is just not about clinical issues. Only when it's things to do the neurodevelopment disorders, there is where the clinical issues must come in, because it has to go all the process of the clinical process to ensure that that person is attended well. But when it's just the disorder or the anxiety, the depression, then someone has to be capacitated to be able to offer the services that is entitled in that manner.
So
And
quick
on
ones
the
here,
other,
because of
yes,
time, I wanted to see whether you wanted to make a comment or maybe a question to any of the speakers. I'm just wary about time, but please do us a favor
okay,
also. I know there's a survey going on. Just share that on the chat so that people can actually get acquainted with it. And maybe you can just kind of in the next 30 seconds, maybe just ask your question or make the comment.
okay. The question is, it's not a comment, it's not a question actually, it's a comment. That I have been kind of reviewing the efforts that have been made by YIDP in Kenya. It's obviously not across within the Eastern Africa. In many other countries, things like this initiative is not taking place. And maybe we have these speakers, we have this potential individual in this regard and this manner, this today. How do we bring this closer to other members of the Eastern Africa around those who are working around the sport? Yes, yes.
Lovely. I like that question because actually YIDP went global. So I think you skipped that part. They do it on a global lens, not even Kenyan alone. But that question is particularly for Collins. He'll respond to that as the CEO. Let me take these last two questions, Dr. Shadrach and Dr. Richard, from Angeline and Bambazi. So let's go to Angeline first. Please make it very brief so that we can get all the responses back by the speakers. Over to you, Angeline.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. My name is Angelina Bwire from UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa. Actually, my question was based on the policy that has been covered now, but trying to also to expand more on the policy. My question will be, we understand the education system of Kenya where we have integrated co-curriculum activities whereby we have sports also in school. And to protect the psychological and the mind of these young athletes in schools, so many sponsors, to call it that, they come and take pictures of them and promise them good life, taking them to, let's say, for example, in Europe. How will we protect this kind of behavior? Because in their mind, they have already set up that they will be going to Europe to play in Europe and something of the sort happens. So how are we going to protect their psychological in terms of like to protect them? So that was my question in regards to policy as well. Thank you. Over.
Lovely. This is all about managing expectations of the athletes. That is also psychosocial. I mean, if they promise you you're going to play next to Messi, and I don't know who the GOAT is it Ronaldo or Messi? Well, playing next to one of the GOATs, and it doesn't happen, that is really going to be an impact. I like that question on expectations. How do we manage the expectations of the athletes also? Yeah, Bambazi, over to you, Sheila.
I'm glad you decided to use the middle name, because if you pronounce the first name is an insult. But it's I'll take that. Sheila will do.
Perfect.
So I will start by saying that I am a professor of neurosciences, and I'm glad to see that there's another neuroscience expert on the field. Now, I'm going to bring it down to what we were discussing about the grassroots, right? The grassroots here in terms of, and at the risk of sounding like I'm echoing my colleague in terms of the brain health and the brain skills, I think here what is important, in my opinion, is education, education, education. But the education has to be relevant to the population that we are serving the education to, vis-a-vis the language that we are using to our African population. Whilst I did hear that we need to bring it to vocabularies that are being understood by, I'm Kenyan, but I live in the UK, but by our population within the African continent. I must also say that I'm the safeguarding lead of Judo in Africa, of all 53 countries. So for me, the last lady who talked about the abuse, which it is abuse, if you're promising these young children in schools about doing XYZ, that is psychological abuse, if nothing else, at the least of it. So I think where I'm coming with this is make it African, make it relevant, and look at the syllabus of the coaches. How do the syllabus look like? Do they have mental health and wellness within them? Because their wellness, they can carry that forward in their day-to-day practice that brings about the mental health. So let us not just put a blanket cover on mental health. The mental wellness practices that are done from day to day are very, very important. That's me.
Thank you so much. And I like the fact that you're actually taking us also that step back the way Dr. Richard was doing. And we cannot, and I appreciate your comment, we cannot blanket it as mental health and leave it at that. It has to be dissected so that all of us are on the same remarks. I don't know what to do, ladies and gentlemen. We have approximately 19 minutes and we need the team to kind of give their insights. I will do this because as I told you, I can actually push things up. Better, you're the last person to go. Then we go back to the doctors to give their comments. Better, over to you.
Sorry to invade the African meeting, but I have
No.
a very special mission.
Don't worry. This is for everyone. Thank you, Better, for joining. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yeah, it's correct. Actually, I spoke yesterday with Collins, and I am the co-chair for the Environment Working Group at Global Mental Health Action Network. I'm from Brazil, and we are working together with several organizations, including UNICEF, the WHO, to build this movement in Latin America. Initially, it's named Latin America Avanza, but we are changing for Latin America for Buen Vivir. And my mission is to connect Buen Vivir to Ubuntu. So Sheila was talking about the language, and I think that we need to talk more about Ubuntu as an outcome and measure Ubuntu. I don't know if this have ever been done in any research, but actually this is my mission and my invitation for all of you to join Global Mental Health Action Network. If you're not part of it, it's an open network that gathers social innovators and mental health professionals and people that working with young. And I have the invitation for our monthly meetings that are usually in the last Thursday of the month. But once you subscribe to GMAN, once you subscribe to the Environment Working Group, there are other groups like financing, like children and youth. And it would be great to have you there. It's a good source for funding and for projects and collaborations. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you so much for doing that, because I like when meetings conclude with that is where the partnerships and the collaboration and the funding, you got me there, Bejo. So thank you very much. We'll definitely subscribe. Let's start with Dr. Shadrach. There's some questions. Just feel free to pick any of them and answer that, apart from the one that has to go back to Collins to let us know whether he's global or is just Kenyan based with his discussions. So over to you, Shadrach. Then after that, Dr. Richard, feel free to answer any question that he might not have touched, and then we can conclude the discussions. Thank you so much. Over to you, Shadrach.
Thank you, Lizzie. And I want to address some of the policy questions that have been raised, and I also saw a question on moving from vision to to infrastructure and some of the financing models that can actually work, so that we do not only speak, make all these commitments and pledges, and we don't really move. So I know I did mention in the first instance when I spoke that we do have policies. I do not think that, especially within the African context, we don't have short of policy or even ideas. Most of the time, I see a lot of policy documents just gathering dust on shelves and are not actually used. And this is because we do lack structured mechanisms of implementing these policies, and especially in terms of financing models for this particular cause, such as mental health among the young people, and particularly sports, for the interest of this particular question. So I want to speak to the two models that I highlighted earlier on, the blended finance and how we can use social impact bonds as a financing model to advance these policies, but also make mental health interventions among young people a practical activity, something that actually happens. So I know many of you have heard these terms for many years and for some time now, but some may be hearing this for the first time, and because we need to speak in plain language so that we don't have any other person left behind. When we do talk about blended finance here, imagine, for example, I like to give what we call the potluck dinner model. So you imagine that you want to host some big community dinner, but the food is quite expensive because there's too many people. But then we have a very wealthy neighbor who has agreed to pay for at least half of the food. But this neighbor can only pay if 5 other families each contribute something towards this. So what that means is that the huge chunk of the contribution is already done, so the others are just filling in the bit that is left. So that is technically how blended finance also works. So we are having the use of public or philanthropic capital that unlocks larger pool of private investments into mental health. So, for example, you're having public money from governments committing and actually budgeting for mental health within their budgets. Development banks providing catalytic capital to pilot and, of course, to scale practical interventions for mental health so that they can take the higher risk of investment for other private investors to come in. So we are having this kind of terminologies coming in to demonstrate some of the financing models that can be used to scale mental health intervention, so that we do not have one single investor or donor or funder supporting a whole course of mental health intervention. So the other is the social impact bonds that I mentioned earlier. And looking at this, this is actually a concept that a lot of people are now adopting. And some call it outcomes-based financing. Some people call it pay for results or result-based financing. So what this particularly mean is that we need to bet more on better outcomes for the mental health outcomes that we want to see. And it brings us back to the measurement that I was talking about. So, for example, we could talk about, private investors putting up money upfront to fund the Mind Ball, for example. So say we are looking at a mental health and life skills program among the young people in sports in Kenya, for example. And this would run for a number of years, 1 or 2 years. And there has to be agreed outcomes that counts. And I keep saying this because in this day and age, there are very few people, be it charity or even private investments, that would support financially any program without prior agreement on what the outcomes would look like. So this is why we need to itemize what we want to see. Those indicators that Dr. Karani was mentioning, the depressed mood, how are you going to know that that has been improved? So those outcomes need to come out clearly when we are seeking such level of support. So they, as I mentioned earlier, there could be fewer dropout rates from school, improved psychological well-being scores, high academic performance, and all those. So then, the government itself or development agencies could pay back, the investors with interest based on the achievement of those particular outcomes. And so I want to, without digressing, back to the elephant in the room, which is a sponsorship model that actually works. So right now, we see corporate sponsorships in African sports is almost entirely transactional and visibility driven. We find a bank, putting its logo on the jersey, a mobile network sponsoring a marathon, for example. And I'm not saying this is a bad idea, because visibility matters, of course, and they do care about revenue. But I also want to argue that we do not need to leave an opportunity to support the mental well-being of the young people on the table. So we can't flip this as a model so that we have, for example, a bank or a telco company funding a country-level digital mental health platform. I want to keep giving Mindball as a specific example, with agreed measure of outcomes that they would report as an ESG impact, for the organization, or even a bank that has structured a social impact board that would then be tied to psychological resilience of the young people in sports. So these things are working, but we keep treating them as cost centers. So it's high time that we move from looking at them as cost centers, but impact in investing. And this is the shift that is actually going to work. This is not new. It is already happening. For example, we have MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth is already deploying blended finance in African fintech. So the infrastructure is there. The framework already exists. And everyone already sees that the mental health field is growing. What we need to do is just to plant this seed, this idea, into the minds of the corporates, into the donors, private investors, so that we can move from mere policy documents to practical interventions that actually work.
And I like that. Thank you so much, Doc. And that's a nice way of actually bringing in that policy angle. And there are things that are working. It's a matter of just, learning from that particular aspect of the ones that are working, and how can we kind of replicate that. Dr. Richard, now somebody asked, what about the coaches? Who looks after the coaches? And I know the policy issues has already been taken care of, and we're running out of time. So maybe in the next 3 minutes, you can let us know who takes care of coaches, and then we can look into, somebody also talked about the language, the relevance. How do we make sure it's all about mental health versus mental wellness? Which language are we going to use just to make sure we're all on the same page? So maybe over to you before I hand the discussions back to the team.
Okay, thanks a lot, Lizzie. And I tend to believe, Lizzie, you are asking about the issue of financing. And I've heard somebody.
I love money. I know. Yeah, there was.
And I've heard somebody, I think the last person to talk was called Beto.
Yes,
I wish
Beto. Yes.
if I were you, that's the first maybe probably contact I would have taken, because there's even.
I already took that. Those links were already copied. I already grabbed those a long time ago.
Yeah, because maybe purpose of this, sometimes, Lizzie, let me probably even talk about your, that maybe Lizzie organization. Funding is not easy, and it's only for the tough. That's a reality. Don't be cheated by anybody. It's only for the tough. I know Tony has asked that question. Angeline has also talked. We have taken over 1 year to get what we call whatever you're calling that UNESCO chair. In fact, it's more than a year. So you have to be persistent. You also have to network. And I've given a very good example. I've just only listened to what Tibeto has said, and I said even this organization, in fact, can even fund. So you're saying, if you wait, maybe probably funding from the government, I don't think it will work. That's the reality on the ground. But again, now you need now to network. In fact, networking is what even as scholars actually makes us to remain relevant. Because whenever I go for any kind of maybe any kind of such kind of a forum, I'll always make sure at the end of the day, I take 1 or 2 or 3 contacts. Like you people have already given us an opportunity to present whatever we have as the UNESCO chair. You'll be amazed, maybe probably in the next 1 or 2 months, we'll be writing maybe probably proposals to you to work with you. That's how, in fact, you network. That is, visibility is all about you. And at the end of the day, how do you also network with other organizations? And again, don't also lose hope. Let me first of all use this one. No matter how much you write, even if you want maybe funding from a certain organization, don't get tired. In fact, if you get tired, Tony will tell you this, just as I've said, for us to get this UNESCO chair, it has taken us, in fact, more than a year. But we have been that patient in such a way that now we have what we call that UNESCO chair, now that we're implementing, etc., etc., etc. So for you, kindly network. Every time you have such kind of a forum, what kind of maybe probably people are presenting? Are you in a position probably from getting any contact now from those people? The moment you get contact from those people and then you network, you're likely to find that maybe probably you have even more people who are willing, in fact, to sponsor whatever you want as an organization. Now from there, I go now to Tony, who takes care of the coaches. I also ask Tony, because I also ask Tony, people do counseling. Who takes care of the people who do counseling? The reality on the ground is, in Africa, and I'm sorry to say so, we do not invest in sports. That's the bottom line. No wonder, like now, you people now you're trying not to chip in the aspect of the mental health that just want to be understood by a very, very minority of the people, but the government outside there might not even be understanding. If you go to Europe, maybe probably a single player might have almost like 6 people who are surrounding that person. We might have a sports psychologist, we have a nutritionist, we have maybe a physician, all those manner of the people, because then they have invested in sports. So Tony, I don't know how to answer who takes care of the whatever, maybe of the coaches. But my answer is, as we spread this gospel now more, and as now various whatever organizations involved in sports now start realizing there is now need for what we normally call the sports psychologist. I tend to believe now we are going to break this gap, such that even if I'm a coach, I have somebody, in fact, within the team that maybe whom I can also maybe probably give me a listening ear. Because coaching is not that, as I said, most of the coaches you're working today, tomorrow you are not there. Again, handling other people's issues is not that easy. In fact, you start now carrying other people's burden, which means you as a person, you also need also to be counseled. So for me, I think that's all what I can say about Angeline. I know you have also worked with you as you're developing this, about those people who come, they coach, they cheat these young people, they go, and that maybe becomes the whole thing. That's an issue. And I'm telling you, even when you go to E10, those guys who are also learning, that's also cutting across the board. And you realize maybe somebody will come and promise you heaven, but on the final analysis, they've already taken exactly what they want. Now, what is my parting shot or tie for this group? Because I said, I'm an African, and I like approaching things from an African perspective. That Africa, and actually in particular in Kenya and the like, South Africa, I know we have people from South Africa. They have invested significantly in developing strong athletes. Like Kenya, I'm sure we are very, very good actually in athletics, and everybody knows us. So Africa has invested significantly in developing strong athletes. The next frontier is developing emotionally healthy, protected, resilient, and society responsible young people through sport. Sport must not only produce champions, but it must protect humanity. I'm only trying to wind up basing on what I think was the theme actually of your whole whatever, and also in line up with maybe what we are supposed, maybe probably UNESCO also tried to bring up that aspect of you're trying now to safeguard maybe normally what we call the prayers. So my parting shot is Africa has invested specifically in developing strong athletes. Then the next step is to develop emotionally healthy, protected, resilient, and socially responsible young people through sport. Sport must not only produce champions as we have done in Kenya, it must also protect humanity. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. We could have this discussion for 5 hours, but only Collins gave me 2 hours, which I've misused quite well. I've used it, not misused it. But thank you very much, Dr. Shadrach, Dr. Richard. This was amazing. And thank you, team, for joining and just giving your input. And to be honest, this is how you network. This is how you get the contacts. And Bebeto, thank you very much for coming in just to say, you know, there's an open opportunity we can work together. Sia, please reach out to Bebeto, reach out to Collins. There's a lot of things I'm seeing that 3 organizations can do together as we proceed.
Lizzie, sorry, we have the financing group meeting in 1 hour from GMAN. So the ones that are interested in innovative financing, please join.
Please share that link. Share that link. We will join for sure. Definitely. Thank you. You mentioned financing. I'm definitely there. Collins, I will hand over the session to you. Please respond to the question that Sia had directed to your side and conclude the session. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much, doctors, for joining this call. Over to you, Collins. And thank you to the YIDP team. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. At the other end, I was thinking to add you 1 more hour, but I've noticed so many people are dropping because we were at 65 at some point. It seems some are catching up with the traffic that we already have in Kenya because majority are Kenyans. Anyway, I would like to respond to Sia because this discussion is very vital and important to YIDP because it's based on the experience and also engaging with the young athletes in the field for the past like 7 years, dealing with young people, try to come up with the framework and the best strategy possible to approach on the language that we use with these young people. But on the other hand, we realized we could not do it alone because it really needs a research work, because it really needs to be proven. And again, it needs to be funded. And also it needs to bring in like-minded people so that we can bring in ideas together, best ideas together that will transform lives. So that brings me to the question that Sia had asked earlier about how to scale it to East Africa. I'll tell you for a fact that we are in the process of doing that because we know you coming here, another person from Uganda, Tanzania coming here, Rwanda. We strongly believe that we can build a team there which will be speaking the same language that we have really delved into for 2 hours. So I strongly believe that we will be able to build a network in East Africa, which will be having this important conversation because even for the tools that we are developing, we'll be more than glad to share them with you and with the Tanzanian team and the Ugandan team, and also to see how much you can even bring into that book so that we leverage all the strength that we have. And also we try to weigh the challenges, whether the challenges that our young athletes face in Kenya are the same as Uganda and also in Tanzania. So that brings me to something else. I hope I've answered your question right. But I strongly believe this conversation of partnership will be able to bring in resources that will be able to scale up that all over East Africa and across the globe. So ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I don't have much. I only want to appreciate all our speakers who have taken their time and shared their insights. That was really very, very rich. Dr. Karani, Dr. Opon, and also Nahon from Ethiopia. And what I encourage the team, let's have this conversation going. And I think for our next engagement, we'll have another roundtable. I think the 5th one that will bring public sectors together, those who are in the ministry, sports, and also those who are in the academies. I'm so glad we have representation from even Kenya Academy of Sports attending this. I believe that you will also support us in making this work across Kenya and beyond. So ladies and gentlemen, I also welcome you to reach out to us. We'll share more information if you want to be the speaker for the next session. For I believe our next event roundtable will only be for athletes across the globe. So already we have one from China, we have two from Kenya, and we are trying to look maybe one in the US. So Coach D, if you are here, you can help us get one athlete from the US who can contribute to this topic. And of course, we are looking at maybe probably 4 athletes so that they can have their time and share if whatever we are discussing here, is it real or it's something that we are guessing? And whatever is happening in China, is it something, how do they cope up? What are the structures that they have? And what is happening in Kenya? Can we embrace Ubuntu? What are the available resources that we have? How can we tailor some of the solutions? Because the solutions are with the players, by the way. They have good solutions. They can share it with you. And only if the knowledgeable people come together and spice it up and put it in good place, then it will be able to change a life of a young athlete across the globe. So, ladies and gentlemen, I also welcome you to the upcoming summit in November. So this is just a build-up. We are in the Mental Health Month awareness, but this will go beyond. This will go beyond just awareness. We will have engagements every month. Every month we'll have engagement. Unfortunately, the month of May, we shall not have this engagement because we have another symposium which is coming, Fighting Dopamine War, because our young people are in the house and they really need the sports. It's really doing good work in making that our children are active. But again, they are really fighting a lot online. There's a lot happening online, like we are fighting to get more likes. We are fighting to get comments. We are fighting to get maybe sponsorship. Somebody said we overpromise players. Coaches will tell them that I'll take you to Europe. They take photos. Unfortunately, they'll not. But what we advise as YIDP, just make that player work hard. Use the right language. Tell them the importance of working hard. Try to understand them. Let coaches know not to compare players with already made, like Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo, he has a story to tell. It has been a journey. Maybe what coaches can only tell them, this is the procedure, this is the right procedure, this is what you need to do so that you can reach a certain level. But they should not overdo it, like Dr. Karani has said. Let us not overdo. Let's do it the right way. There is one thing that you mentioned, what really, I'll close by that sport should not only produce champions, but it should protect humanity. I think I'm going home with that. We should protect humanity across. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. At this juncture, I would like to appreciate all the delegates, our technical team, YIDP, everybody who have made this event a success. Thank you so much, and see you in our next roundtable next week.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Collins. Have a blessed day.
Ubuntu to all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Pedro. See you in our next forum.
Mchezo ni dawa, kimbia na ndoto zako, usichoke wala kuwa. Mwili wako ni gari, akili ni ramani. Safari ya maisha lazima iwe safi. Twende sasa, tusonge mbele. Nguvu zetu zishinde vikwazo.